Welcome to day 16 of the R Advent Calendar 2019. We have less than 10 days to go. Well, 10 days including today, but we are making fantastic progress. Let's just jump right into it. In day 15 yesterday, we talked about some basic plotting. So today we're going to try some different types of plots. Now, like I said, this is a little bit out of order because we actually looked at the tree data back on day 14. But here on day 16, it's giving us the instructions to read it in. If you saved your script from day 14, you'll already have this type of code where we're reading tree.dat into, or reading the Christmas trees.csv into an object called tree.dat. And it says it wants to visualize the amount of Christmas magic by tree type. All right, so let's copy this code out. And then we'll walk through it. So day 16 box plots. Box plots are actually one of my favorite types of plots. I just think they're really useful in a lot of cases where people might use a bar plot or something. I find box plots to be much better. Now, as always, don't forget to set your working directory, and load in your data. So in this case, in my environment, I'm going to go ahead and clean it out again. We don't have anything, so I need to reread in the tree CSV file using the line here, tree.dat, right? And now that we have that, we can run this box plot. Oh, but there is also an error, I believe, in the head of the tree.dat file. So this is going to get a little bit complicated. Let's see if we can fix it. And again, I think this has to do with some issue with saving things out in Windows. And so the easiest way to fix that, excuse me, if we look at the top of tree.dat, you can see this weird thing at the beginning of tree.dat. So it's not being set properly. Now the easiest way I think to do this is probably something like this. And I'll talk about what I just did. Okay, so this is important. It might have caught a lot of you when you tried to run this code. The column name is sort of malformed in the data. And so what I did here was use the colnames command, right? Colnames of tree.dat just gives us the column names of that file. But what I said is take the first one of those and assign that as the character string type. And so what that did was just overwrite that first column name, which was all garbled up, and fixed it to call it type. And now I believe this should run, and it does. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of clear. I'm saying, let me run through that real slow. I hope you guys don't mind. You can skip ahead a little bit if this makes sense to you already. But let's read back in tree.dat again, as it is in the CSV file, and let's just run call names of tree.dat. Okay, so now we can see we have this vector. The first one is the one we want to fix later because it has something weird going on, but it's just a vector. So the first one of these is the type, the height, fragrance, etc. Right? Now, if we just look at call names of tree.dat and we slice it on just the first one by using the square bracket notation that we talked about when we were looking at subsetting, it's very similar. Now you can see it just returns that one value. And if we use the assignment operator to overwrite that value, then we can pretty much fix it. And that's what I did here on line 93 of my script. All right. And so then we run a box plot. Now a box plot is really cool. So it uses this notation, which is how we define functions in R. And what it's saying is the y-axis is going to be Christmas magic versus the type. And so it automatically splits it out by type. We see fir, pine, and spruce. I believe by default it just puts those in alphabetical order. And then the y-axis is the amount of Christmas magic. Now, if you haven't seen box plots before, I encourage you to look up what they're showing you. It's a little complicated to explain in this short video. The most important thing I think is that this thick black line is the median value, and then the size of the box kind of defines the distribution of the data. But I don't want to get into it too deeply here. You can certainly Google that later on your own. All right, so now it's saying let's make subsets of each of the tree types. And in this case, the example uses code from dplyr, so it's using that filter function from dplyr. We can run all those lines by just selecting them and hitting enter. The quotes look fine, so we don't need to fix those. And then we're using the double equals to say the type equals pine for our spruce. And now you can see in our environment we have these 3 new objects. Each of them had 10 observations. So it looks like this data set is evenly distributed. And then the instructions say let's compare the height of pines versus spruces. And so copy that. So it's saying box plot the pine's height versus the spruce's height. And that looks a little funky. I'm not sure if this is how I would choose to show this data. If you just use a regular plot, that might be a little more interesting. So this is just going to give you dots by example. But it's kind of messy. But I mean, you know, we're just testing stuff out. And then finally, this is showing us a little bit of how to customize plots. I'll fix this in just a moment. So another thing that's kind of nice about R is you can add new lines wherever, kind of after commas are a decent place to put them usually. That's going to still run and it makes it a little easier to read. And so here what we're saying is the color is going to be red and forest green. The names will be pines and spruces, and the Y label will be tree height. Let's run that and see what we get. And now, oh yeah, okay, so this is why this was, let me go back for just a second. So again, the instructions are not exactly right. So it said to compare the height of pines and spruces using this tilde notation. But since we want to compare them, it's not a function. We just want to put them side by side. And so that's why the comma is used here instead. Okay, so if we just run box plot of the pine's height, comma, spruce's height, we'll get them both here. And you can see it looks like the pines on average are a little taller than the spruces, but probably not significantly taller because the boxes overlap with one another. All right, so let's run this again now. And we can see that it's cleaned up the plot, makes it look a little nicer. So now the box for the pines is colored red, the box for the spruces is colored forest green. We fixed the names on the bottom, so instead of just 1 and 2, it's now pines and spruces. And we changed the label on the y-axis to tree height. You can compare these yourself in the upper left of the plot window. You can hit the blue left arrow and that will show you the previous plot. You can see there's no Y label, the names aren't right, of course the colors aren't there. And if we go back to the latest plot, we can see all the changes. Okay, so that's doing box plotting. Sorry for the confusion. I'm doing these in real time, and I'm doing these all on December 1st, so the data set has just come out. All these little warts and bugs and everything else are finding them as I go. So hopefully seeing some of that troubleshooting helped you, especially things like fixing the column name. I think that's the type of thing you're going to run into quite a bit with real world data. I hope you followed along. I hope it wasn't too confusing. If you have questions, please ask. I'm happy to answer at any time. Otherwise, I will talk to you tomorrow.